All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to the grand finale of our 12-part masterclass. Today, we are going to completely shatter a very pervasive modern illusion. We're taking aim at the myth of the AI neo-god. Because by the end of this explainer, we are going to reclaim the absolute magic and, quite frankly, the vital necessity of human creation.
You know, we constantly hear this grandiose narrative everywhere right now. There's this idea floating around that artificial intelligence systems have just suddenly woke up with their own creative agency, that they're independent artists or these brilliant original authors. But today, we're pulling back the curtain on the actual hardware to ask a really foundational question. Is AI actually a true creator, or is it merely a digital scripter? Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the AI neo-god myth, then move into the von Neumann Babelfish, crossing the semiotic bridge, wielding the divine script, the algorithmic orchestrator, and finally, the magic of authorship. Section 1. The AI neo-god myth, shattering the illusion of artificial consciousness. To really ground ourselves here, we have to think about what the philosopher Hannah Arendt said. She pointed out that true creation requires praxis. Now, what does that mean? It means an active, engaged doing that is completely inextricably tied to lived human experience. A machine fundamentally lacks this. It doesn't feel joy, it doesn't experience grief, it has absolutely zero societal context, and it faces no biological friction whatsoever. Real art requires a genuine internal drive, and that is something cold silicon simply does not have. So, if it's not a creator, what exactly is it? Well, the cultural theorist Roland Barthes gives us the absolute perfect term for this: a scripter. An AI is an incredibly sophisticated vessel. It blindly processes massive databases, it mimics and it recombines pre-existing human language. It's essentially a giant mental kaleidoscope. But it does all of this without the genuine, exhausting human effort the copyright law actually defines as the sweat of the brow. Section 2. The von Neumann Babelfish, the mechanical reality of artificial intelligence. If you're a fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you already know exactly what a Babelfish is. Generative AI basically operates as a modern-day Babelfish. It blindly ingests one format, like your English text prompt, maps it to a highly complex continuous vector space, which is basically just a massive mathematical map, and then spits out a totally new format, like a block of Python code or a digital image. But the crucial takeaway here is that it's blindly translating. It doesn't truly comprehend a single word it processes. Now get this. You might think these systems are performing perfect, infallible logic, but an incredible 80 to 90% of the heavy mathematical computing cycles powering these massive AI models are actually just probabilistic, hardware-level approximations. They aren't doing exact math. They are making highly educated guesses burned right into the silicon. And that creates massive compression and those lossy, entirely unpredictable outputs we see so often. Section 3. Crossing the semiotic bridge, the divide between mind and machine. There is a massive physical divide between how you and I think and how computers actually execute commands. On one side, we have our human cognition, what researchers call OS alpha. It is warm, highly associative, probabilistic, and beautifully messy. On the other side is the computer's arithmetic logic unit, or the ALU. This is cold, rigid deterministic silicon. It relies on absolute ones and zeros. So human thought flows continuously, but the microchip demands discrete, unapologetic exactness. To cross this terrifying gap, what the experts call the modality gap, we use the semiotic bridge. Rooted in the philosophy of Charles Sanders Peirce, this bridge is what flawlessly translates our fluid, abstract imagination into the exact physical execution required by a microchip. It literally protects us from those lossy AI hallucinations by forcing those probabilistic guesses into structured, highly deterministic constraints. Section 4. Wielding the divine script. Text as the ultimate universal interface. So what exactly forms the foundation of this powerful bridge? We refer to it as the divine script. Highly structured code, things like JSON or Python, acts as the exact deterministic translator. It is literally the only way to safely compile your messy, beautifully associative human intent straight into hard physical reality. Text isn't just for reading anymore. It is the universal operational interface for commanding machines. Think about how this actually plays out chronologically. At T-3 seconds, it starts as purely abstract creative intent inside your mind. At T-1, that intent gets formalized and structured into the divine script. And finally, at T0, that text triggers exact, physical ALU execution in the silicon. Your abstract thought literally becomes physical electricity.
Section 5, the algorithmic orchestrator, the evolution of the modern creator. This strict separation between human strategy and mechanical execution forces us to completely redefine what it means to be an author today. We are evolving way past the old 18th century myth of the solitary romantic genius pulling ideas out of thin air. Instead, you are becoming the algorithmic orchestrator. You, the human pilot, surrender the tedious technical execution, the literal painting of the pixels or the generation of the syntax, over to the machine. But you maintain complete and utter rhetorical control and strategic intent.
This brilliantly illustrates the geometry of modern authorship. On one hand, we have protortion. That's the active human mind carefully mapping its vision onto reality with extremely high fidelity. On the other hand, we have distortion, the lossy stochastic guesswork, what we call the automated miasma, generated by algorithms. True creation absolutely demands protortion. It requires the active human rejection of the machine's random guesswork.
Because if you don't reject that distortion, you run into real-world consequences. Because of agentic tort, which is just the legal liability for autonomous actions, tech scholars point out that developers constantly use humans as moral crumple zones. Just like a car's crumple zone absorbs a physical impact, the human orchestrator is positioned to absorb the legal impact of an algorithm's failure. This legal reality proves that the human pilot is fundamentally the sole author. You bear all the risk, which means you must wield all the control over the digital scripter.
Finally, Section 6, the magic of authorship, the undeniable master of the machine.
By fully rejecting this AI theology, we can step up and reclaim our rightful place. You are the theological steward of the ALU. The architectural documents from our sources prove time and again that the absolute only path to bit-perfect data is through human intervention. By applying the literal sweat of the brow, you override the machine's automated miasma and you lock in absolute deterministic truth. The machine is totally blind without your mandate.
So, I want you to remember this. The machine is an incredibly powerful enabler. It amplifies your effort and it massively reduces cognitive friction. But you remain the undeniable painter, while the AI is simply the brush. The intent, the emotional resonance, and the actual soul of the work belongs 100% to you. As we wrap up this grand finale of our masterclass, I leave you with this final provocative thought. We've completely stripped away the magic trick to see the von Neumann architecture and the reality of the Babelfish. So, will you settle for acting as a moral crumple zone for an unpredictable facsimile of intelligence? Or will you actively seize the divine script, cross the semiotic bridge, and truly command the future? The choice, and the absolute magic of authorship, is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep creating.